Recovery Dialogue. I want to welcome people from all around the world, both peers in recovery and allies who support recovery around the world. I am Nancy Dudley, consultant to Colombo Plan and member of the U.S. State Department's Global Recovery Working Group. Welcome and good day to all. Today is the 5th of what will be a monthly Global Recovery Dialogue. And this event and our previous 4 events are part of an overall soft launch, which is leading up to our official launch of the Global Recovery Network in June of 2024 at ISSUP's Global Conference in Thessaloniki, Greece. That is the Art of Healing Conference. I hope you all are going to attend. And for those of you joining us for the first time, the Global Recovery Network, or as we call it, GRN, is a new entity. And it includes members from the peers, people who identify as peers, and also allies of recovery. And these are both allies and peers from around the world. The GRN is supported by a consortium of international organizations, and our mission is to promote a universal understanding of recovery and the diversity of ways in which it can be practiced. So our GRN website is being perfected and will be launched in June, so stay tuned for that. And without further ado, we'll get started on today's program. And I'm pleased to introduce our facilitator for today's event. That's Michael Botticelli. Michael is the chair of the Global Recovery Network and the former director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy under Barack Obama. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to introduce our presenter for today, and that's Boro Goic. And Boro is the president of an NGO called Celebrate Recovery, and he is also the chair of the Recovered Users Network, known as RUN. And he has been a leader in the field, particularly in the area of network and network building. He knows about benefits and challenges, and he is going to share with us his firsthand experience in leading that effort and leading a dialogue on that topic. So, Boro, the floor is yours.
Nancy, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Hello to the audience. It's very nice to have you globally here, to see people from all around the globe want to discuss and to hear. And I don't like that somebody calls me expert. We are everybody pioneers in the field, and during the time, you know, in the recovery and surrounded with recovery people, I can just say, you know, that I need to learn more. The drugs is changing, and also recovery paths are changing, but still the need for recovery is still the same. And this is what I know for sure. People who has a problem with addiction, they are really struggling, and they are in a need to enter to some support called recovery. Basically, in these dialogues, we had opportunity to hear about different topics, and now it's upon me a little bit to speak about recovery networking and all the benefits and challenges behind. So I will try to share a screen. Okay, I hope now it's fine. I hope you see it all. Okay, a little bit to introduce just how to. Yes. Okay, just a little bit to present about Recovered Users Network, which is, let's say, political platform. And it's based in Gothenburg, Sweden. Nancy didn't say that I'm living and working in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in capital Sarajevo. But this organization is settled in Sweden, and now has 63 member organizations. But also what is very important for us, there are a lot of individuals which are experts in the field of recovery, and also academics and people who are connected with different kind of research and getting evidence-based data. So the main goal for us was from the beginning to provide a political voice to recovered users and recovery organizations, and to contribute to policies by raising voice of recovery movement on national, but also EU and UN level, where maybe we are at mostly presented. And also, as I said, so we are connected about advocacy work towards recovery-oriented policies. This is the main goal, it's advocacy, but advocacy without data, without evidence-based data, it's not always easy. So when you advocate for something like we are doing for recovery-oriented policies, we need to be covered not only with our narrative and nice recovery testimonials. We need also to push and present evidence-based data. And because that connection with the researchers worldwide, it's very important. Why? It's very simple. Academics who are in this field need a target group, and that are recovered users. And we need basically data that they will produce from us for our advocacy work. So it's very simple, and with the years I saw it's a very qualitative together work between us, who are part of the network, who are voices of recovery, and the researchers who are in need of different data, qualitative, quantitative, that can be combined to make a better work in that field. So let's start a little bit with a I call it DNA of network organizations. So basically, I can totally understand that recovery organizations are working in the grassroots field. And this is the main goal. So if you ask recovery organizations, what's your primary goal? Primary goal is to help people come out of addiction. Primary goal is to support people. And then when we say, okay, what do you think about becoming part of the some networking, which is working in some advocacy field? The answer is why to be a part of that. Many people and many organizations doesn't understand idea and the vision of networking together. Why? Because they are prioritizing own work. Is that okay? Is that fine? Totally. Totally. Priority is grassroots field. But there is something behind that. Also, network organizations in the eyes of the grassroots organizations are like big organizations. They have 100 of members. It must be a lot of money behind that. But the truth is a little bit different. Most of network organizations that I met or be a part of that are organizations that are struggling with the money, that are organizations that are led by mostly 1, 2, or 3 enthusiastic persons, and that are organizations that are struggling with their membership. So why they are struggling with their membership? It's really that vice versa. From one side is expectation problem of the members, of expectation, why am I part of this network? Am I there because I need some project proposals? Am I there because they will connect me automatically with somebody who I want to be a partner of? It's always a problem of that expectation. From the other side, networks are sometimes very weak in presenting what they want to do with their members. So it's always gap. And I felt it always gap. So basically, even if this gap is not so big, even if we do everything to communicate our priorities, to try to connect, only 5 to 10% of all organizations in the members will be active. So now I'm not speaking about RUN, I'm speaking about World Federation Against Drugs, I'm speaking about European Federation of Therapeutic Communities. So 200 members on the list. If you have a 10 to 15 active means a lot, you succeed. And that's that's DNA of that. This is not the thing that we should be frustrated of. Oh, we are frustrated. Nobody respond on my mails. I don't think this is a right thing to do. I think we should be happy that the people are there reading, but don't have so much time and dedication because their grassroots work, because in the DNA of that organization, it's not to network only, then also to work with the people and to be active. So this is really to understand. This is really to understand. But from the other side, the question is for recovery organizations, do we want to change something that is bigger than my organization? So this is other pair of the shoes, let's say like that. The answer is very simple. If we have 1 or 2 voices, we are loud so much. If we have 100 voices, we are much more loud. If we look at politically, in the way of countries, why European Union exists? So it exists that the voice and some policies and economy is stronger. Do they agree about everything? Not at all. Are they still together? Yes, except UK. But UK should now think about their benefits and of UK, of being part of EU or not. But let's put that on the side. The question is basically, is my organization, do we want to see things to change that are bigger than only what I'm doing in my grassroots field? I started my organization in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, with 2 people in recovery in 2008. We did really amazing things in the first few years, helping people, opening counseling center. It was full of people who need help. And from the other side, it was full of people who came out of different rehab centers and wants to have support into the society, into integration. They wanted to hear somebody who finally understands them. Not to say, okay, now you need to find a job. No, to hear, I know how it's hard after you have everything settled in your rehab. 2 years, now hard to speak with employers. And it's a question what to say to employer. Where have you been for these 2 years? Would they stigmatize you? And then I thought, really this field, I know what is addiction. I was a part of that hell for the 14 years in heroin. And I really hope that everybody recognizes that recovery is possible, that recovery is something that people need. And then 2012, I got one invitation from European Union, and it was like some civil society forum on drugs. It still exists. We are still members. I accepted invitation as a guest. And I came there. It was like 50 different networks, experts, NGOs. And I saw many different target groups being together presented for something. For example, youth, they had one network organization presented for their needs, whatever that is. Harm reductionists, more than one. Harm reduction, international harm reduction organizations, together talking about voice of the people who are part of harm reduction services, struggling, don't have needles, clean needles in different countries of Europe and candidate countries and potential candidate countries. But I saw nowhere people in recovery. And I question myself, why is that? Why is that happening? Why there is no network who represents people in recovery? I know there are networks existing that are representing TCs. I know that our network existing, like ISSUP from UK, representing Christian rehab centers all over the world. But this is around the treatment program. It's around ideology. It's fine. Are those conferences full? Yes. They share knowledge. But this is not knowledge about recovery. This is knowledge about their treatment programs. And it's fine. And it should exist. But the question is, why we are not presented was for me in that period. Why we are not presented on the different arenas where people will hear our voice. If the people can hear voice of people who are currently users and create policies around those voices, why they are not hearing voices of recovery, people in recovery? So why there is no some kind of networking in that way? So isolation is something what is connected with addiction. So recovery is connectedness. The question is, why recovery organizations who are working in the grassroots field are also working sometimes in isolation? So it's a big question. I'm not telling I know why is that things. I'm just raising something that I saw in these last 10, 15 years. So isolation is isolating you, and connectedness will bring you, more views. But we are sometimes afraid. Is this acceptable for me? Is this acceptable for my organization? How much time I need to give if I become part of some network? It's a question. Nobody is telling you. Network is not a list of your employer where you will be employed on that day and how much time you need to work. This is not a network. So nobody can tell you that. How can I contribute? It's also sometimes a problem. We cannot write everything on the list, how you can contribute, how much time, how much this, that you can see if that suits with your grassroots organization duties every day or some plans that you have. The question is, does this network that asked me to be a part of them share same vision like I? And what does it mean recovery for them? This is also sometimes very difficult for organizations that are always questioning, okay, is the recovery this for you? Is the recovery that for you? What is your vision? My vision is not a part of your vision. So we are not in the same, but still, if we come back for European Union, so maybe it's not good parable, but still not all countries have the same vision, but still working together to achieve some goals together. So what activities can we network around? This is also a question from a lot of organizations that want to be a part of some network. It's very simple. There are differences. It's a good practice exchange, networking, study visits. So let's put that in the praxis. If your organization is working only, for example, in one state in the US, and you have a connection in communities, you have a good networking part there. But if you are going to Thailand and see in Thailand how people are working, that doesn't mean that the whole program from Thailand you need to bring to US. But through these exchanges inside of the networks, your knowledge of organization and people who are part of the organization can be bigger. And then some parts of that you can bring inside of your grassroots work. Or research, and as I said, research, we can network around different research trainings, advocacy like we are doing in RUN, reducing stigma, or building recovery-ready communities. So the question is now, from the context of the networking list, how to become an agent of change. And it's always same. If I want to contribute to something, then I need to be more involved. And organizations and individuals who are more involved, for example, in RUN, we didn't ask them to be involved. We didn't pay them to be involved. They want voluntarily to be more involved. What does it mean? To give your expertise. What does it mean? To share your knowledge or what's happening in your country regarding some recovery-oriented policies that are in the moment there. So to be presented during the time of the different webinars. So it's a different how you can be involved. And this totally changed the perspective of we need as a network to write everything, what are the expectations, just to enter and to see what will be important for me and my organization. It's also a very good part of the networking. But then it comes again the question, then comes again the barrier, my strong values. I'm thinking a lot of recovery, it's not a process. Today we spoke here in my organization, like when recovery process is ongoing, this is not a process that we are giving a little bit attention. Personally, we give a lot of attention to that. Yes, I'm now sober for 6 months. I gain 15 kilos. I can now lead a conversation for 15 minutes and I'm not ashamed anymore. I look people in the eyes. But also, when it comes to some recidivism, the recidivism is not, okay, it happened. No, it's also considered as a problem, as a problematic. So why I speak that everything is in recovery strong. My values, our programs, our standards, Okay, when you think about recovery, do you think that it's okay to drink a few glasses of alcohol? Yes. Oh, I cannot network with you. We think different. And if I network with you, I will lose my values. This is also what I hear sometimes. Or what happens sometimes, okay, recovery it's a process that has a beginning and the end. Maybe I think like that. But maybe people from NA know. Maybe people from NA wants to be a part of the group every week until the end of the life. What is the problem? They need help and I don't need. What is the problem? Recovery paths, and we thought, I think in the first session, is my path better than yours? And this is like the same. Is my path? Yes, my path is the best. And I stay in isolation with my organization and I will stay there and thinking that my path is the best and will not network with nobody. And when you ask me, my program is of course the best. And if you go to some other treatment center, if you even succeed in your recovery process, who knows how that will be. So this is a problem inside of these are the side effects of the recovery. So I think we need to be more united and we need to network in between each other and to accept different recovery paths. For example, what happened with one organization from Norway? It's a good example. So people being inside of the recovery field, but then in Norway, I think 3 or 4 years ago, it started that they want really to legalize some drugs and to decriminalize everything, so they've been starting to get support from the government. And then they've been very active in run. But with that kind of changing of ideology a little bit, even nobody said, we are against, just be a part. We are here about recovery, not about legalizing things. Then they've been very inactive. So we are changing. Organizations are changing. So somebody is active in this moment, somebody is in next, but important is, that we want together to reach and to achieve our vision. So understanding each other paths, I just said a little bit about that. For example, we need really, when we network, to see that things are not changing in the moment. One example about our involvement in the CND, it's a Commission for Narcotic and Drugs. Michael was following that and been participating there for years from the institutional side. Really 10 years ago, it was not so much talk about recovery. Recovery was some wording that came from United States. And in Europe, nobody understood what that really means. Does it mean rehabilitation, or who is behind that? Is that only drug-free path or whatever that is? So the lot of policies didn't include that. But slowly, with the involvement of different organizations, individuals, researchers, networks, not only run, even policy makers and the governments start to look on that way. UK government always know what they are doing. Scottish government with their policies, Irish government in the last period. But I think with the years, I always heard somebody who is in recovery, and also thinking sometimes my way is the best way. So I heard the different narratives from the different governmentals. It was really different, and that was bothering me. What to do? Do we ever will be together in this field? I speak now about politicians. Recovery is not only thing in the field. We need to understand that. There is prevention, there is harm reduction, there is early intervention. There are a lot of measures. It's not the only thing that we need to say, okay, this is the most important and consider that. But the language and the narrative was different. But with the years, things changed really. And now, last CND, we had the one-side event, and it was run inside of that. It was UK government with Edward Day. It's a great recovery champion from the hospital in Birmingham. It was Serbian government, it was Croatian government, and it was UN. Anja Busev was there, who is also part of GRN. And it was from Euro Drug Agency from Lisbon. So basically, everybody spoke about some recovery-oriented policies from own position. We spoke about some paper that we brought, global paper on recovery. And for the first time, I felt, that during this networking, not only in between us, then with governments, also, we are talking from the different angles about same thing. And this was for me very surprising, even UN. Only who was not talking about that, it was Euro Drug Agency. And they said on the end, without to know what to say, okay, it's everything nice, but you need a little bit to have better understanding of recovery. And everybody was speaking clearly about recovery. But why was that? Because Euro Drug Agency never been a part of some bigger discussions about recovery. They are considering only some other things like harm reduction, that's fine, but we want to see balanced drug policies. Not only one way, then balanced. Harm reduction should exist, recovery must exist. We speak about need inside of the people, and need is desperately for the people who has a problem with addiction. I want to get out of this problem. Go out and speak in your cities with the people who have a problem in addiction, and then count it, and then see, would more people say, okay, I want to continue my drug use, it's a very good, I found my life here, it's my purpose, it's great, it's fine, I enjoy it. Or count it, how many people will say, I desperately want to go out of that. So they need help in the way of recovery support. So some global view of recovery, it's I think, how much I can see. I don't have so many information from the global south so much. But I think global view on recovery is really raising. And I think that become very visible and close to not only to policymakers, then also to all population. Recovery to be visible, people need to be more presented, not only recovery users, then to ordinary people, allies, people who are working with people in addiction field. If they are only stigmatizing them and telling, okay, I saw him for the 10th time in my methadone program, I know his parents, there is no chance, so we will never have some recovery-ready communities, but we need to create less stigma inside of that, but really, recovery is more visible than before. But the question is how to make it even more visible. The question is how to raise more voices to contribute to the bigger stigma reductions, how to have more evidence-based data. This is something what is very important. So there are new networking opportunities for people who are working in grassroots field. As Nancy already mentioned, it's a global recovery network that in 1.5 months, exactly on 26th of June, which is World Drug Day. So we choose that day because it's very important for everybody who are working in that field. So we will launch that in the ISSUP conference in Thessaloniki in Greece. Can we promise something to the grassroots organizations now? It will happen that, and your organization will get a project, and you will network with us on this and that way. I don't think it's also so much important to promise. It's more important that we raise, that we are existing, and that people and organizations, allies, individuals, and also organizations who wants to be a part of something bigger should become a part of the global recovery network too. So basically, I'm not sure that if we want to change something, that it will depend on Nancy, on Michael, on me, on some project proposal that you will get. I think if we want to do something more and bigger, it will depend of involvement of the organization that will join. If the organization join, if we are more than 5 or 10% active, if we share knowledge and experience, we will get new recovery champions, we will have more voices, we will have a more evidence-based data, and more academics will look at us, more policymakers will see that the recovery needs to be a part of their policies. And then on the end, what will be? It will be that the more people get healthy from this biggest problem, and this is addiction, that most of us faced off, but most of us saw that addiction is really recoverable condition. It is chronic, it is relapsing, but it's a recoverable condition. And this is where I'm ending my presentation. I hope it was not too long, and wants to raise a few questions for discussion. So it's 3 very simple questions. If somebody has experience, to show us and to tell us about that experience, to talk exactly about benefits, to say exactly, okay, when I enter this and this, I get this, this, and this as a benefit, and also from inside out, what barriers hinder greater engagement in different recovery networks. Thank you very much.
Boro, thank you very much for that incredibly engaging presentation and your sharing your experience in developing and maintaining networks. As Nancy said in the beginning, my name is Michael Botticelli, and I'm very honored to be part of this global recovery network. As she said, I worked for many, many years in both state and federal government. I was actually the first person in recovery to hold my position with the Obama administration. And I thoroughly identify with many of Boro's comments about, at the time, having someone in recovery in those positions, people had no idea what it meant and the value of having people in recovery. I want to just kind of summarize a couple points that Boro made, because they are very much in keeping with the goals of the Global Recovery Network. And one was working in isolation, and how do we not work in isolation anymore and work in connection and community and support each other in terms of the work that we're trying to accomplish. So that's one important goal. The second is this is a rapidly developing field, and while many of us have our own kind of personal opinions, the research and data on recovery, what works, what doesn't work, the different pathways is ever evolving. And I think it's an important goal of the network to really infuse and continue to make sure that we educate ourselves on the latest science and evidence around it. And the last one is professional development. How do we continue to develop recovery champions and recovery leaders here? So before I kind of open it up to people and just ask if you have questions or comments, please raise your hand. Boro, I want to follow up on one of the issues that you raised that I think many of us can identify with. And certainly I saw this in the United States. And you talked about how existing organizations will often advocate for things that are in their own best interest, right? So you use therapeutic communities will advocate for themselves, and treatment programs will advocate, or prevention organizations. But bringing people together to kind of advocate kind of for people in recovery and what people want can be a challenge. So how did you negotiate, or what processes did you use to kind of bring people together and to really come up with a common set of priorities and agendas? I think that's probably a struggle that many of us can identify with.
Agree with that, but when it comes to a policy changing, it was not anymore talking so much about programs than about outcomes. And recovery was the outcome for all of us, which was very important. So in that way, nobody talked anymore, about different paths, because we've been talking about changing different policy, because we saw exactly there is missing a voice of people in recovery, whatever that is, Are you from NA? Are you working in prisons? Are you working with a woman? Are you working? How do you consider yourself as a recovered user or in recovery? Doesn't matter at all. If you have problems, no problem, we will not be against. It was, for example, they've been like, we don't want to enter because you are run, recovered users network. And we are from Sweden, criminals returning into society, and we never called ourselves recovered because this is for us, you are full and proud of yourself. Okay, I want to understand that view. So we try to understand each other and to say, okay, we are not pushy. Okay, see what we are doing. After 5 years, they've been also in. So because we didn't say you are in recovery, so you are not so worthy like me, but really my identity is not recovered users. This was 22 years ago, addiction. We are living in different world. We are just working in this field. This is my call, but this is not our identity. So I think with the time, with acceptance, and with the policy changing, not now experience exchange and study visits, study visits will be differently. If we want to exchange programs, it can come to some difficulties. But as it's a policy level above, who understands that? It was participating without problems. But some people said, okay, who cares about policies? Who cares about finances when my country is so poor, they will never give me some money. People from Africa said that. And that's also fine. Why to waste my time when I know everywhere is corruption? But if we look like that, then we don't need to do anything. I'm also living in a corrupt country, and I'm not getting money from my country, but I'm still fighting. I'm still advocating, but not everybody is.
Well, thank you. Your energy is infectious and inspires everybody to do that. So I'd like to go back to and open it up to other participants and some of the questions that you raised in terms of people's own experience, their own benefits and challenges in establishing and creating a network. So if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand or put a question in the chat. And we'd love to hear from you. Did Boro's presentation resonate with you? Were there particular aspects that you identified with in terms of your own experience?
Michael, I'll jump in and share a few thoughts. And that is that, when I think about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the grandfather of all 12-step groups, which is a path that many, many millions of people have walked in order to find their life in recovery. There was a period of time in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous where there was a movement among at least one group that said, the only real problem that we had with addiction to alcohol was as a result of using hard liquor. And in our group, we have decided that it is okay to drink beer. And did Alcoholics Anonymous throw this group out of its umbrella of unity and say, you are no longer part of us? That is not what's happened. What they said is, our overarching traditions say that each group is autonomous and answers unto itself. And so the way it worked out was that people decided to follow that path of controlled beer drinking. And over time, that meeting died out on its own. That was its own outcome. There was no need for saying, you don't belong, you're not part of the network, we're stopping contact with you. And the point of my mentioning this little snippet of AA history is to talk about how recovery, in my perspective, has to do with acceptance and open-mindedness and willingness, which are universal principles, I think, of being our best as human beings, and that we don't need to fear being part of a network if our vision and someone else's vision aren't identical. And that the way forward for recovery, as Boro's experience has testified to, is there is a greater power in being open to other people's perspective and experiences on recovery. And that's the key to having a network increase and grow in size and strength, is to be open-minded to the experiences of others, and knowing that networking doesn't mean that you subscribe to the exact same even vision of things, and that the more that we can unify around the idea that recovery is possible and a life of dignity is possible after addiction, the better off we'll be to do these very important things that have been mentioned, which is to reduce stigmatization so that people can come out of the shadows and find connection. So that's just, I really enjoyed your comments tremendously, Boro, and I hope people won't be too shy to share their ideas or ask some questions.
Sounds good. William, I saw that you put a question in the chat. Unfortunately for me, it's in Spanish, and I don't speak or read Spanish, so I wonder if you would like to ask it and we could have it interpreted and answer your question. Well, hopefully we can get to that. Our friend Sammy has his hand up. So Sammy, we know and we've heard in our previous dialogue some of the exciting work that you're doing. What's your experience here? What are your comments? Oh, Sammy, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Michael. First of all, I want to say one of the biggest challenges that I've experienced as a recovery ally is you find like you're the only one speaking that language of recovery out there. Even those already in the addictions industry will mainly be talking about treatment and harm reduction than speak about recovery. So I think there is very little of our voices being heard out there in regard to recovery. And there is also another challenge where you find that how much time, like Boro's asking, how much time are people willing to put into recovery? It becomes a big challenge, because then looking at, if I'm in the treatment segment, you know, people come in, maybe they're paying for the services, but now how do I get myself get paid for doing recovery, which, you know, in fact, doesn't have many followers, and therefore that becomes really a big challenge for somebody who's beginning. But I really appreciate the fact that Michael has spoken about Boro has spoken about networking opportunities. This is the time we should seize this moment and network more than before.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. A number of people in the chat have commented about both the power and potential of the voice of people in recovery to make change, which is certainly part of this. And I love the expression, nothing about us without us. And really, how do we continue to institutionalize the role of people in recovery in those kinds of positions? So Junjun, actually perfect timing. Do you want to talk about your comment here and kind of the importance of having people in recovery in leadership positions?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Most of our policies today are determined by people who are not in recovery but wishes to help people with addictions. And for us in recovery, it feels like I appreciate the good intentions, but there's always seems to be it feels like there's another agenda behind all of this other than recovery itself. What I would really like to see and feel are people who came from the trenches who are in recovery actually being determining all of this policies that affect the people with addictions. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Junjun. I think, your comments, I think, are probably universal sometimes, where people can give lip service to including people in recovery. And I think part of our goal and other people's goals is, how do we institutionalize that? How do we make sure? So, for instance, I have often felt my own experience was there were a number of people in recovery in the Obama administration. And while we were very grateful for that, it shouldn't just be an accident that there are people in recovery, and thinking about how do we cultivate and promote leaders for those kinds of positions become important to us. So JK asked a question, how can we sustain a stronger voice here? Are there ways, beyond just networking together? Have people found ways that we can continue to kind of sustain and promote this? I think Boro talked about some of the challenges that, many organizations face. They have a lack of resources. There might be one or two dedicated, energetic people who are often very busy and have a hard time. So do people have reflections on, Boro, Nancy, Junjun, others, on how do you keep this momentum going? There's often a lot of enthusiasm initially, and then it kind of dies out over. So how do you continue to sustain this over time? Boro, I'm going to ask you to respond to that, because I think your network's been around for a while. So how do you sustain it? How do you keep it moving?
Again, it is upon people who are leading the network, so network needs to be visible. It needs to be alive. When people are coming after 6 months to your website, it needs to be something differently. Some news needs to be differently. You need to be in a constant connection with them, but not only through the newsletters, because we are living in such a busy period and times. So nobody's reading anything anymore, so it's not to understand why it's that, but we are all busy, even if we are not busy. So title, it's enough, and we understand the whole text. It's not only in the newspapers, it's also something when we are studying. So basically, I'm thinking, involvement, how we did it, it's involvement through the different research. So when only research is there, nobody wants to participate. But when you say, okay, research is there not only to contribute to our network, we will give you data to you also. Then you can do with your data in your country whatever you want. Then we saw much bigger involvement. So connections, constantly some communication, which is not easy. You need to communicate about something that is involving you. You cannot just say hi in the network and we are there. Then constantly to have something that will bring people together. Again, somebody from the list will just fill it in and get the data and not say anything, but some people will use that for different things. Or, for example, constantly be presented at the different conferences with recovery champions, with the people. I think we in Global Recovery Network needs to work on the recognizing new recovery champions all over the world. And now we will be all together in Thessaloniki. Tomorrow it will be some other conference. Recovery needs to be a part of that conferences with the people speaking about that. Professionals too, but voices of people in recovery too. Not to speak only about their testimonials, I was bad and now I'm good. To say about what's happening really in that field, what are the challenges, and how really the policies can help them. Because we need a system. We need a system. People do recover naturally. Yeah, they just sometimes decide, I will quit, I get married, it's enough. And we don't have a data about that at all. So we don't take that into consideration. If you speak with the professionals in treatment, they will say they will never be so much addicted. but we don't know how big addiction was a part of their life. So that's also happening. It's happening on a daily basis. People are getting out of drugs. We need to take account of that and to put them into positions that they can have some influence. So I think this is how to sustain that. And of course, to sustain something, we need to have some money.
So
Yeah.
that's I think that's it.
Without money, it will be nice and enthusiastic.
So I think that's an important question, and you know, every organization, every network needs resources, either both people's time and people's money to do that. So how did you or other people kind of navigate in a world where everybody in the addiction space seems to be wanting their piece of the pie? So, like, how did you raise resources, you know, if there were not government resources to support your work? You or others, if you have that experience, like, how do you rely on fundraisers, donations? How do you get the resources that you need to support it?
I will try just shortly to give an answer, short one. Look, if there are membership, it's for example for 20 active grassroots organizations. If they in their, let's say, plans and strategies have some kind of involvement in the advocacy field, so they need to sponsor that. Let's say like that. So because we cannot sponsor it. You know, so basically, so I see, for example, Elisa is here from Mexico now. So she was a part of San Patrignano. And San Patrignano was a part of the run, and they grounded together with us. Not because we gave them money for a traveling. No, because they want to be involved inside of that and to bring expertise. So basically, it's everything. It's up on us and our enthusiasm. Yes, I would like that everything is covered from the governments, and that will be the perfect thing. But for the startup, involvement and money from the grassroots organization. That will bring us to the sun, and then you don't know what is happening after.
Great, thank you. Elisa, why don't you introduce yourself and ask your question or comment?
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm Elisa Rubini. I just want to congratulate you in my private capacity. Right now, I'm a consultant with CICAD OAS. But long ago, as Boro mentioned, I had the pleasure to be among the founders of RAN. I was working with San Patrignano for over a decade, and I had also the pleasure to meet Nancy in different projects we are doing. So recovery, it's at my heart. And I really want to see that and congratulate all the work that has been done, because in the last decade, I feel that recovery is more and more present in the policy, in the decision as a concept. What is the challenges ahead? We work so hard to build the recovery champions. What we need now is recovery leaders. So that's the next step, and the next generation of people like you, Michael, people like Boro, people like Nancy, who have the knowledge, they have the heart, and they have the capacity to make a bigger change. What is the challenge? As we say, sometimes there are no resources, but people are resourceful. Mm-hmm. So many times there are people who are committed to this movement and want to broaden that and materialize connection. And connections are important with the institution, with member states at the CND. There are multiple ways to make recovery more visible. But I just want to share my piece of advice, and I'm really looking forward to these recovery leaders that are really badly needed in this field. And keep up the great work. And a big hug to everybody. And I'm so excited about the launch of the recovery movement in ISSUP Greece. And finally, we will be there together again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, you know, even over Zoom, your comments are infectious, and I think you really represent, I think, what the best of people in recovery have done to this field for a long time, and that's to bring their heart, their passion, their knowledge in terms of what they're doing. So really want to thank you for sharing your experience. And I completely agree that I think we have to continue to think about ways to develop leaders in this field and how we create those pathways for people who come about this work in different ways, and not always through an academic or educational venue. And so I think it's important for us to develop those mentorship opportunities, those learning opportunities for people to do that. So thank you. I see our friend Warren has his hand up, doing tremendous work in South Africa and around the world. So the floor is yours, Warren.
Everyone, good to see you all again. But I just want to say I really enjoyed your presentation. I got a couple of thoughts about what you were saying, and I'm glad you guys are speaking about resources and and the role that resources plays, because if we think about, like in my experience, people who are quite enthusiastic about recovery and the networking opportunities, and these recovery champions or networking champions that's driving the networking in, for example, in South Africa, because of stigma and unemployment and poor opportunities in our low resource settings, survival becomes more important than enthusiasm to run a network and become part of a, you get what I'm saying. So in order for people to be able to advocate for substance use disorders and recovery and those kinds of things, they need to have some kind of survival in terms of resources and paying their bills every month and just living, and I mean, that's the baseline of everything. And in my setting, that's currently what's happening, because people in recovery struggle to find jobs, even in treatment centers and in the recovery space itself. You guys spoke about people in recovery having a seat at the table at the discussions on a national level or a provincial level or a higher level, but actually just getting a job in recovery in my setting is quite difficult. So never mind, still on a higher level. And then I wanted to speak about and obviously, when people don't have that kind of support behind them, financial support, they kind of not lose interest in recovery and advocating for recovery. It's just that life becomes more important. Just surviving becomes more important. That's kind of what happens in this setting. Then I want to speak about the idea of getting all these different parties together in forming a network. For example, if I wanted to form a network in South Africa, I think the first thing that we'd have to do is kind of define what recovery means, because there's so many definitions of recovery. Everybody has their own definition, so we need to have a singular definition, a definitive definition of what recovery is, so that everybody can get on board on. And this, there's different pathways to recovery, and I suppose everybody believes their own pathway. So again, I want to speak about the low resource setting that we in South Africa, and I suppose the rest of Africa as well. So our government just kind of, I think it's about 50%. They cut their substance use budgets to 50%. So all nonprofits that's kind of dependent on subsidized funding from the government was cut for 50%. In actual fact, the one of the two specialized addiction science trainings at universities in the country was also cut by government. So everybody's suffering in the substance use space in this country. So for example, and so what's happening is all these treatment centers and recovery organizations and non-profit organizations that work in the recovery space are all kind of, they're struggling to network, not only because they believe that that there's only their pathway to recovery. That's just one aspect of it. The other aspect is that because of funding or this low resource setting, everybody's vying for a couple of dollars, a couple of rands here and then, and so they're kind of wanting to distinguish themselves from others, not join the network of becoming one. It's about what am I offering that's different to the other person or the other organization. So I don't want to be part of the network because I need to differentiate myself and offer something that I can attract some kind of funding. So when it comes to the few private funders that would fund nonprofit organizations, in my setting, people kind of camouflage substance use or recovery services by speaking about mental health services or trauma-informed services, or they camouflage the substance use side of things because that is so highly stigmatized that they're not going to get funding for it from private funders, and so they kind of have to call it something else. So everybody's trying to not be part of the recovery space, but kind of finding their own, differentiating kind of something that's making them seem a bit different to the organization down the road, kind of just to attract funding. And that's kind of what's happening in my setting, and it's really difficult to coalesce all these different parties together for that very reason.
Great. Thank you. Well, part of my not so great task is to end the conversation. So we're at time today. I know that there are a number of people who have their hands up. I will just say this, that part of the goal of the Global Recovery Network is to continue to have conversations like this and to support each other. So this will not be the only opportunity that we'll have to talk about this topic and to share each other's kind of experience and lessons to do that. I want to thank Nancy and Ashwin and Pravita and George for helping us do this. And a special thanks to our presenter Boro, who I think gave us a lot of great wisdom and experience, and hopefully we'll continue to learn from each other. We will send out a summary of the call today, but really look forward to kind of future conversation and us to continuing to share our experience and continue to work together. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing more of you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. We'll
Thank
have
you,
another
everybody.
dialogue in July, so
Thank
stay
you so
tuned.
much.